Okay, guys, welcome back to the second session, and we're going to resume again looking at Kira chapter 14. All right, so here we see that Katie is deciding to send away Lynn with something from Katie. All right, what is she going to do? What does she want to place in Lynn pajamas? Can someone remind me?
Her hair.
Her hair, good. Okay, Hannah. She wants to cut a piece of her hair and place it in Lynn's pajamas. All right, but she hesitates, or she thinks that this is not such a great idea because again, Lynn will not be wearing these pajamas. All right, so she decides to actually do what? To take the lock of hair that she cut from her own, and to tie the lock of my hair around her neck. Okay, remember this is a story narrated by Katie, so just a quick reminder every time we see the pronoun I, it is the voice of Katie speaking to us. Okay, then when Lynn was gone, all right, then when Lynn was gone, I lay on her bed and cried. After I cried a while, I started to feel angry. I didn't understand why the doctor who came to make sure Lynn was dead was one of the same doctors who had been taking care of her. If he was such a good doctor, then why did she die? And I thought maybe the doctor was mistaken. Maybe my parents were mistaken, and now they had taken Lynn away when she still possessed a small spark of life in her. Miracles happen. Maybe she would open her eyes later. What if my mother had held the mirror wrong and had missed Lynn's feeble breath? Okay, so here again, the sense of guilt, okay, or this confusion that we discussed yesterday is still going on with Katie. Okay, Katie feels upset with her parents a little. All right, she feels angry with them. She even has mentioned that she feels a little bit of hate toward them because she feels that they're responsible for Lynn's death. Okay, then she's also blaming the doctors. Okay, why is she blaming the doctors? What is she blaming the doctors for? Who could tell me? Tala, please.
Not being able to save Lynn.
Well,
Because
Ahmed, yes, correct. Okay, Tala, can you elaborate?
because of the doctors, like said she was in good health. Why did she die?
Exactly. All right. There are, as a child, she thinks that doctors, their job is to find a cure, okay, or to make us feel better. All right. She still doesn't understand that some diseases are just terminal, and that there was nothing maybe the medical field could have done to save Lynn's condition. Okay. She's also thinking that maybe if they were not efficient enough or professional enough to find a cure for Lynn, maybe they're also doing a mistake about declaring her dead. All right, so this is just a way of Katie unaccepting the fact that Lynn is gone. All right, so let's continue. And yet I knew Lynn was dead. I could feel the place inside of me where she had resided. The place was empty. It was hard to stay angry when I felt so sad. I would rather have felt angry, but instead, all I could do was sob, and sobbing is just heavy crying. Even though people had been coming over all day, the house seemed so lonely that I couldn't stand it. Okay, and of course, here it goes back to the idea that she's basically meaning that you could be surrounded by so many people, but when that one special person that she was really attached to is gone, you feel almost alone. Okay, and this is the feeling that she has. Okay, a lot of people are coming to console them. Okay, and to console means to make them feel better or to calm them down or comfort them. But that special place that Lynn held in Katie's heart is now empty. So even though she's surrounded by many people, she still feels a sense of loneliness. Okay. The room grew somewhat dimmer. I didn't move as it grew dimmer still. All right. Dimmer means darker. Then, with a start, I hurried outside and ran to the alley in back of our house. Through a break between the buildings, I saw that the sun hung low over the horizon. I watched it until it started to hide between two trees in the distance. Then I climbed on a car and watched until only half of the sun was visible, then a quarter, and then I felt a huge sickening panic inside of me and ran as hard as I could to a ladder I saw down the alley. I rushed up the ladder and climbed on the roof of somebody's garage. I saw the sun again, a quarter of it, and then a slice, and then it disappeared. The last time ever that the sun would set on a day my sister had lived. Okay, so here we see that she doesn't want the sun to disappear because she feels that this is the last day that she witnessed her sister alive. All right, so she's running around just trying to keep the sun in her appearance or in her presence, because here the sun here is symbolic for Lynn. Okay, she doesn't want the sun to go away because she refuses that this is the last day that her sister was alive in. Okay, I stood on the roof and watched the darkening sky. Okay, and of course here again the mood is very sad and depressing. Almost we can sense the melancholy in this in the mood, and the part of the mood is affected by the setting, and we see here the darkness. The day is now becoming darker. Okay, what kind of mood is Cynthia Catahota, the author, trying to put us in with darkness? Is it bright and cheery? What kind of mood do you think it is? Can someone please tell me? So we see the setting here, the sun is disappearing and it's becoming dark. Okay, the setting now of the day is nighttime darkness. How is that going to affect the mood? Or what kind of mood is the author trying to place us in? What, please?
The author is trying to put us in a dark and gloomy mood.
Exactly. Okay, dark and gloomy. Again, just to match the loss and the feeling of sadness that the family, not only Katie, is going through. Exactly. Okay, I heard my father calling out, "Katie, Katie." I didn't answer. I didn't want to talk to anyone. His voice grew closer and then further away. For some reason, I felt panicked again and screamed, "Dad, Daddy." His voice grew closer. "Katie, Katie." He sounded panicked too. I hurried down the ladder and fell into his arms. I cried and cried, and he did not cry at all. We walked quietly inside for another meal of sardines and rice. And we know that Katie did not like this food, if you guys remember from previous chapters. However, Sammy ate calmly, my mother ate doggedly, my father ate politely. I didn't eat at all. Okay, so of course, here, loss of appetite is very normal when someone is not feeling too good. Sometimes people do not are unable to eat. Okay, that's a normal reaction sometimes. Can I fill my water glass? Said Sammy. Yes, said my mother. He got up, pulled his chair over to the sink, and filled his glass. He limped a little as he walked to the sink. So let's pay attention to this particular statement. Okay, what does it mean to limp? Can someone tell me what does it mean to limp?
Look with difficulty.
Bravo. Okay, perfect. And who was that?
Sammy.
Ahmed. Thank you. All right. Yes, it means
Yeah,
to
Miss,
work with. Yes, go ahead, Ahmed. I hear you.
but how old is Sammy?
Sammy, at this point, he was about 5 years old, if you guys remember. I believe so. All right, so here he's filling up his glass of water. He's still, we would say, a toddler. He's still very young. All right, and we see that he's limping. Can someone tell us why? Why would
Maybe
we say?
because he's pulling his chair over to the sink.
Mm, let's think deeper into previous chapters. What had
Oh,
what
because
took
of his ankle,
place?
because of the bear trap wound.
Exactly. Okay, good. All right. So here we see that the injury that Sammy suffered the day of the picnic, okay, on Mr. Linden's property, had left some type of side effect on him. And the damage here is that it causes him to limp a little. So maybe he's still in pain, or maybe this is something that he's going to have to deal with for a long term. Anyway, what we need to understand here is that Sammy is limping, and the effect of it or the cause of it is the accident that occurred on Mr. Linden's house. All right, usually his ankle was fine, but every so often since his accident, his ankle hurt. Okay, so here we see that his injury was not so smooth. Okay, so he's still suffering some side effect of pain in his ankle. The smoky anger I had seen once before filled my father's face. All right, when did we see father angry before? Can someone remind us? When did we see father angry? Ward, please.
When Sammy was injured, and he saw the bandaged leg of Sammy, he felt angry because he felt like Mr. London has a responsibility to the situation.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay, at the hospital, when Sammy was being, taken care of by the doctors at the hospital, when Hank Garvin took them, father was very angry. Okay, he was very quiet yet very angry. The anger, we could tell that this is very unlike father's personality. Father's personality is usually very quiet and very calm. And this is the first time in the story that we ever see him getting very angry like this. And again, as Werd said, it is all because he feels sorry, or he feels like, that someone owes him something. All right, someone is responsible, and that someone is Mr. Linden. He's responsible for Sammy's injury, yet he wasn't compensated for it. Okay, not even apology, not anything. Okay, so here, now that he sees that Sammy is limping, it makes him more furious that his son is hurt. And, he basically didn't get anything for it, not an apology, not any financial compensation or anything of that sort. He turned to me. So father is angry. He turns to Katie and he says, I thought he was mad at me for some reason. Suddenly he stood up. That's enough, Katie, he said. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I jumped to my feet. You're going to show me where you found that trap that hurt Sammy, he said. Okay, why? Because if it's still there, I want to throw it away. My mother stood up. You want to what? You heard me. You're taking that girl out over my dead body. He seemed to consider this. Finally, he said no. So once again, I sat in a passenger seat and bumped across the fields toward where we had held our picnic months earlier. The last time I'd been there, Lynn and I had eaten rice bowls together. An animal, maybe a coyote, scrambled across the field as we drove. I directed my father to where I thought we had held our picnic. My father told me to wait in the car. Be careful, Dad, I said. I know, he said. Okay, so what is father doing? What is his intentions? Why is he taking Katie back with him to Mr. Linden's property? Why? What does Dad or Katie's father plan to do? What, please?
He plans to go to the picnic, or where they held their picnic, which is at Mr. Linden's property, and take the trap that hurt Sammy and throw it away.
Exactly. Okay, he plans on destroying that trap, maybe in hopes that it will not hurt anybody else. Okay, so he's making Katie stay in the car. And of course, we see that Katie's worried about her father. She's telling him to be very careful. I sat there as the sky turned black and the air grew brisk. I closed the windows and leaned against the glass, watching my dad with a flashlight on now, searching through the trees and fields. His face in the flashlights glowed grim and determined, and maybe a little crazy about this thing that had hurt his son. This thing owned by a mean rich man who dreamed, a mean rich man who owned his dream house. He left my sight for a long time, and I got nervous and even started to feel sick to my stomach. But then his light flashed somewhere different from where I had thought he was. I do not know what good it would do if he did find the trap, but I felt glad anyway that he was looking. I liked being out here better than being at home. I felt scared to return to that house where Lynn no longer lived. I thought I would be so sad I would die. When he finally returned, he threw some things into the trunk and got in. If anything, he seemed angrier than before. What kind of man puts traps like that in a field? What is he trying to catch? Squirrels? He looked at me. Squirrels? He started the car suddenly, and we lurked across the field toward Mr. Linden's house. My heart pounded as we bumped across the grass. I thought maybe my father wanted to yell at Mr. Linden. This terrified me. First of all, it was as if my father had turned into a different person. Where was my real father, who always looked before he leapt? Okay, remember, he was a very careful man, a man of careful consideration. Before he planned something, he said that he would like to give it a lot of deep and careful thought. Now we see that father is acting on emotion. Okay, he's angry and he's letting his anger control him. He's being very spontaneous and taking these very quick decisions. Okay, suddenly when he's eating, he says, "That's it, we had enough, let's go." All right, he makes a very quick decision, maybe a rash one. Okay, but he doesn't care at this point because he's determined to do what's right for his son. Okay, someone hurt his son, and that person deserves to get some punishment for it. Okay, and that person, whether it is this rich man, he doesn't care. Okay, so first he goes and he removes the trap. Okay, and we could tell that he is even astonished by how the trap looks. Okay, because maybe Mr. Linden has no business keeping such an awful and dangerous thing on his property. And now he's heading towards Mr. Linden's house, which is definitely terrifying Katie. Okay, so be please be careful of the change that we are seeing or noticing in father's personality. Okay, second of all, Mr. Linden was, well, he was Mr. Linden. All right, Mr. Linden has a lot of prestige. Okay, a lot of respect. He's a very a respectful, rich, and powerful man. Okay, so is it going to be that easy for Katie's father just to get some revenge from him, or how could this happen? You couldn't just go to his house to yell at him. And shouldn't we go home to take care of my mother and Sammy? We reached the private road in front of the mansion, and my father kept driving. He stopped not far from the house and opened up our trunk and pulled out a 2x4. He walked up the driveway to a red Cadillac and crashed the wood into the front windshield. So, how is father reacting to work? How is he getting this? How is he punishing Mr. Linton? Did he yell at him as Katie thought, or did he do something else? What do you guys think? And if so, can you just basically like rate a father's reaction? Do you approve of it or no? Who could tell me? So let's just first decide, what did he do to Mr. Linden's property?
He broke his car's windshield.
Exactly. He smashed a piece of wood into the windshield or the front area. Okay, this is the windshield of a car or the front area of the car, and he crashed it. And we remember the red Cadillac was, we discussed earlier, that was a fancy and expensive car to show how luxuriously Mr. Linden is living, while his poor employees are suffering. Okay, and so basically, he crashed the car, or he crashed the front windshield. Do you approve of this reaction? Do you think that this is the right way to do things, or is father
No,
overreacting? Ahmed,
he's
please tell me.
overreacting. He's overreacting.
So, if you were Sammy's father at this point, and Sammy is hurt, and your son is hurt, and he's limping, and the owner or the person responsible for this did not get any type of retribution, how would you handle that, Ahmed?
No, but didn't they go on his property too?
Yeah, he did
And
remove. He removed the trap. Yes. Okay, but did he get anything directly out of Mr. Linden? I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is a good idea what he did, but what other solution would you have advised Katie's father to do? What other way could have he handled this? Do you have any ideas?
he should have done nothing
So you think that he shouldn't have done
because
anything?
if they reported Mr. Linden for it, they would have charges for themselves because they had trespassed on his property,
Right.
on
Okay.
Mr. Linden's.
Okay. So you think that they just should not do anything about it?
Yes, because they were lucky to not they were lucky to not be caught by Mr. Linden's security guard,
Right.
so they might be charged with trespassing.
Okay, okay. Tella, what about you, hon? What do you think?
I would have done something, but I wouldn't have done the thing that Sammy's father did.
Okay, so you would have taken some action, but you wouldn't have crashed his car, all right, or destroyed the front
Yes,
windshield of
I
his
would
car.
have done it like smartly or in a smart way, in a way that I he could be the wrong one.
Yes, okay. You said something that's very important. Okay, and here we see that Katie's father allowed his emotions to take the best of him, okay, or his anger to take control of him and to drive him into doing something that places him in the wrong, okay. And like you guys mentioned, and Ahmed mentioned it also indirectly by the idea of trespassing. All right, trespassing means you should not be allowed on people's property. This is not your own home, and that is true. So here we see the problem here with father's reaction is not the fact of we understand that he wants he feels entitled to something, and that he feels that he wants to give Mr. Linden some type of punishment for his behavior. However, he's doing it in not such a healthy way. All right. So yes, that being said, you're absolutely right. Okay, the glass exploded outward and sprinkled to the ground. I thought I saw someone peek out the window as this madman who was my father. My father got in and we roared away. All right, that means they drove very fast. I looked at him, but his face held no expression. Lynn once said our father was the most determined man in the world. I remembered once how she and I had seen someone act rude to our father. Later, I asked her why our father didn't hit the rude man. Lynn said that he accepted rudeness and unfairness to himself, just as he accepted hard work. If he could have, he would have worked all the time and never slept. My father was the most generous man in the world. I knew that without Lynn telling me so. If Mr. Linden or any other man had come to our house feeling hungry, my father would have welcomed him and given him the best food in our kitchen, the freshest fish, the hottest rice, the sweetest pastries. He would have made us be polite. He would accept anything and anyone so long as he could earn a living to help his family. But I saw that on this one day, for the first time since I had known him, he could not accept the way his life was turning out. Okay, so this is a turning point in father's personality as we see that he's turning from this man that it would accept any injustice or any unfairness imposed on him as long as he was living peacefully with his family and he accepted all the difficult working conditions and the long hours. The only thing that he wanted was the best for his family and for them and for him to work hard and earn an honest living to provide them with a happy life. But we see here, is he happy with this way of living? No. Okay, father is fed up, and this is when he said he had enough. And basically, when he says he had enough of being mistreated, he had enough of being unjustly, treated by the richer and the more powerful. Okay, type of class, which is Mr. Linden and so on. And he is now deciding to take matters into his own hands. Okay, even though we might not agree with him, but this is how he is retaliating to Mr. Linden's injustice and unfairness toward him and his family. I watched our small town pass by. Okay, we drove right past where we should have turned to go home. We didn't stop until we were in the next town. Then my father pulled over and lay back against his car seat. I didn't move. He was my father, but I was not sure whether he was sane. Okay, so she thought that her father was going crazy. Since Lynn had been sick, he'd been grumpier, but I had never seen anything like tonight. He studied me. Hungry? He said. Uh huh. Yeah, I know you are. Our car suddenly filled with light, and then a sheriff's car pulled in front of us, so the police stopped them. The sheriff got out and slowly walked over. He flashed the flashlight at us. My father rolled down the window. Going for a ride? Said the sheriff. My father hesitated. I saw that he suddenly couldn't think. I felt a protective surge. I'd never felt before that I had to protect my father, but now I needed to protect him against this man. The only thing I could think to say was, "We are on our way to eat tacos." "Tacos," said the sheriff. He looked confused. "You mean at Pepe's?" "Yes, sir," I said, though I had never heard of Pepe's. As a matter of fact, I had eaten tacos only once, years earlier in a restaurant in Illinois. I have no idea why I came up with tacos. The sheriff studied my father. "We just had an accident at Mr. Linden's house." "Oh," said my father. "Someone busted up his caddy." All right, busted up means destroyed or broke. His caddy is a nickname for Cadillac. "Oh," the sheriff shone the light on me. "They think the perpetrator drove a light blue Ford." Our Oldsmobile was gray, light gray. The sheriff moved his light over the outside of our gray car. My father leaned out and said, "I've always been an Oldsmobile man." The sheriff leaned in with his light shining on me. I smiled, but he could tell I had been crying. "Something the matter?" he said. "My sister died," I said. I let out a sob. He turned off the light. He seemed to think. The night had grown cool, and when he breathed through his mouth, mist filled the air in front of his face. He switched on the flashlight again and pointed at my father. He turned it off again. He straightened up and nodded at my father. "Better get her some tacos." We drove off in a new direction and stopped at a small Mexican restaurant called Pepe's. So let's just stop here for a second. Why did the sheriff stop the father, Katie's father? Why were they stopped by the
Because he
sheriff?
thought they might have been responsible for breaking Mr. Linden's Cadillac.
Exactly. Okay, here the sheriff suspected that they might be the ones responsible for the damage that was done to Mr. Linden's property, which is the Cadillac. And what did they suspect? They were searching for a blue car, and luckily, the car that Lynn and that Katie and her father were driving was a gray one. Okay, so they did not meet the description of the possible people
Miss,
responsible for.
Miss, Miss, but were they the ones who destroyed his car?
Yeah, they were. But when I guess the people that
But
made the
how did they how did they get the color wrong?
because it was nighttime and it was dark, and a light gray could be sometimes confused for like a bluish. Okay, so they basically got lucky. Okay, that the person that made the complaint, okay, about Mr. Linden's car might have mistaken the car color. All right, and this is one way. And of course, here we see that Katie felt that her father was confused and a little bit unable to speak. So she took responsibility to speak to the sheriff herself. And how did she get him, or how did she interact with the sheriff? What did she tell them they were going?
To get tacos.
Exactly. Okay, so she tells them that they're going to tacos, and the sheriff said you guys are going to Pepe's, and she played along perfectly fine. Okay, I didn't say anything, but I felt pretty surprised at this new turn of events. I had loved tacos the one time I ate them, but it was weird to eat them now in my saddest moment. Okay, so here we see that father is indeed going to take Katie to have some tacos at Pepe's. Um, the irony here is that Katie is actually about to eat something that she likes at a very sad moment in her life. So it's kind of like mixed emotions. Okay, the floor of the restaurant was made of brick colored tiles, and all the tables were covered with pretty blue and white tile. Ponchos and sombrero hung on the walls, which are little Mexican decors. A singer crooned in Spanish from the record player. The atmosphere was festive, okay, which is again ironic to the internal feelings of both Katie and the father. Okay, the outside of Pepe's is very festive. We hear the music. She loves the tacos. It's a very happy and cheerful mood. However, inside we have this internal conflict that they are very down and gloomy and upset over the loss of Lynn. A waiter approached us and said, "Dinner for two, amigo." And amigo means friend in Spanish. The night did not seem real. Okay, my sister was dead and I was about to eat tacos. I ordered five of them. In Illinois, I had eaten one. Now I ate all five of my tacos while my father watched. impressed, and then maybe a little worried. You don't want to get indigestion, he said. When we got home, my mother was sewing a hem in the kitchen. She was fixing my black dress that I knew I would be wearing to the funeral. I was worried, she said. Katie ate 5 tacos, said my dad. That takes time. He and my mother both looked at my stomach as if expecting to see it explode. When it didn't explode, my mother raised her eyes to my father. She said the things she liked to say when she wanted to remind him that he could not afford any sort of unusual behavior. You have got a long day tomorrow. He and my mother left the kitchen. She didn't ask me to wash the dishes, and she didn't do them herself. I had never known my mother to go to sleep with a sink full of dirty dishes, and I never washed them myself unless I had been nagged. But that night I thought I should. I cleaned the counters and even took a mop to the floor. I wasn't sure what sponge to use for the counters. It seemed to me that my mother used a different sponge depending on what she was doing. But there was only one sponge at the sink. An array of bottles and jars of cleaning fluids sat under the sink, but there were no more sponges. I could imagine my mother getting annoyed if I used the wrong sponge. If Flynn were here, she would have been able to tell me what sponge I should have used. She would have been able to tell me what I should do next. I did not know what to do without her to tell me. I lowered my head to the kitchen table and cried. Finally, I wet a dish towel and used that to clean the counters, the table, and even the chair seats. It was late when I finished. I sat at our table and did not know what to do next. Later on, I lay in bed and saw the happy little moth, still alive, flitting from the nightlight up the wall and back to the nightlight. And it occurred to me what I had seen in Lynn's eyes the night before. She was wishing she were that moth. Maybe that was the last thing she ever wished. Okay, so this is the end of chapter 14. And again, remember the moth. You guys are going to see it on the term exam. Very important for symbolism. The story, we covered a lot of symbols and symbolism. You guys met it in term exam number 3, and we're going to meet it again in term 4. Okay, so here we see the symbolism of the moth. How was Lynn treating the moth the night before she died? Who can remind me? How was Lynn treating the moth that fluttered through the window the night of Lynn's death? How did she react to it? Who could tell me? Okay, Warda, please.
She didn't react or do anything except for look at her with her eyes. When Katie was looking at Lynn, she didn't see her move at all, except for her eyes just looking at the moth.
Miss, is Lynn's corpse still in the bedroom?
No, Lynn's body is going to be taken to cremation, and we said that
But it
cremation.
but is it still in the bedroom, or
No,
is it
no.
even bothered
It
to
was
move it?
taken away. Remember, she cut a piece of her hair and turned it into a hair lock and placed it in a necklace around Lynn's, around Lynn's neck, because Lynn will be taken away. Okay, by the people that are responsible for funeral homes and so on. Okay, they take the
But
body.
isn't cremation to burn somebody's body?
That's correct, and to turn into ash, and this ash is going to be placed in an urn, and this urn is kept.
Uh,
Mhm.
is it kept with the family?
Yes, some families decide to keep it. Sometimes the ash is the if like for example, I actually have a friend, and the dead body. They decided to. They were contemplating on basically dividing the ash between different family members that want to hold or possess that person, or to be reminded of that person that passed away. So usually you can divide the
Miss,
ashes.
isn't cremation not allowed in our religion?
That's correct. And I've mentioned earlier that the Islamic way
But
of
different cultures cremate their dead.
exactly, yes, that's absolutely correct. And depending on different religions and different cultures, they yes, they react differently to the body or the dead body of loved ones and so on. But the Islamic way of doing things, of course, is by giving them a proper burial and prayers and so on. Okay, so yeah, we don't this is a different culture, and something interesting to know, okay, of how different cultures deal with different things. Okay, so here we see that father returns back home we see that Katie feels a sense of loss. And as Ward reminded us, that night, Lynn was following, her eyes was following that moth all over the room until she fell sound asleep. And the moth is still there. Okay, in a way, we are feeling that this is a way of Lynn always, still surrounding Katie, or Katie still feeling the presence of Lynn, and understanding that maybe Lynn wished to be that moth. Okay, and maybe that was Lynn's last wish or last thought. We also see that Katie feels a sense of loss or indirection without without Lynn. She feels that Lynn was her guide. Okay, she's the one who directed her to what to do next. If she was in a dilemma, she didn't know what to use, as something as simple as which sponge should she use to clean the kitchen counters or the tables. Lynn was always there to guide her and to give her direction. And now that person is not there anymore. Okay, and it's difficult. We see that Katie breaks down into tears, and she has to start to make decisions on her own. Okay, so we see here that Lynn's death is going to also cause Katie to mature and to develop and to start to make decisions on her own, and basically own up to things. She mentions that she never did dishes. She had to be nagged to do the dishes. Okay, now she feels a sense of responsibility. No, I should get up and do these dishes. Even mom left them in the sink, but I should own up and do them. Okay, so Katie here again, she's going to grow and blossom, and of course she's going to have Lynn's diary to always go back and read these memories and those special moments lived by Lynn. Okay, tomorrow inshallah we'll meet for chapter 15. Please check SMS later on after your day of school and online sessions to check for chapter 14 study guide questions and the vocab words that we need to know for chapter 14. Okay, please answer that for homework and send it to me on SMS assignments or through email. Okay, guys, thank you for today's participation. I'll see you guys tomorrow for chapter 15 and a little bit of grammar review. Okay, any questions, any concerns, comments?
No.
Okay, thank you, Muhammad.
No.
Thank you all. Thank you. Have a great day and enjoy your break. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.